Fight fans, welcome to the PBC Podcast, brought to you by Premier Boxing Champions with your host, Kenneth Bouhairie and Michael Rosenthal.
Welcome to the PBC Podcast. I'm Kenneth Bouhairie.
I'm Michael Rosenthal, editor of USA Today's Boxing Junkie.
Thanks as always for joining us. Got a pretty fun show for you guys today. WBC World Featherweight Champion Gary Russell Jr. is this week's guest. We're also going to break out our crystal ball, look ahead and predict who will win end-of-year awards for 2021. And of course, we're going to recap last weekend's Fox PBC Fight Night card. Now, speaking of last weekend's card, the buzz is about the buzz, really. The entire Caleb Plant versus Caleb Truax card averaged 1.6 million viewers. The main event, Plant versus Truax, averaged almost 1.9 million viewers, peaking at over 2 million viewers. Not to mention the prelims, averaged 871,000 and peaked at 1.2 million viewers. Mike, these are some pretty big numbers. The main event for this card was the highest since December 2019, the rematch between Jermell Charlo and Tony Harrison. And this isn't an anomaly with Caleb Plant, the undefeated IBF World Super Middleweight Champion. When he won the title back in January 2019, he set a PBC on FS1 record, had a peak viewership of 986,000. Then that July, I believe, he made the first defense of his title against Mike Lee, drew 1.14 million viewers. Then February 2020, packed the Bridgestone Arena. I was there. It was an electric night. And he drew 1.8 million viewers on Fox, and now we're seeing a peak of 2 million. Mike, what does this mean for Caleb Plant?
Well, I think Plant resonates with fans. Number one, people are talking about him. The fact that he's a potential opponent for Canelo Alvarez doesn't hurt. Sort of lifts him up, in terms of the way he's perceived. But just overall, he's a gifted, dynamic, unbeaten guy in his prime. And he has this intensity and this self-confidence that I think attracts people. It seems like he's destined for big things. He's one of those guys. We don't know for sure, obviously. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out. But it seems like he's got something special going on. Bottom line is fans are just intrigued with this guy for whatever reason.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even beyond the potential Canelo Alvarez fight, these numbers have been trending up for a while, and he did 1.8 in his last fight. So clearly, there's something there that the fans are intrigued by, and I think obviously it's a skill in the ring, undefeated world champion. He's got that swagger, he's got that style, and people believe that he's a legitimate threat to become the man at 168. Now, that man at 168 is Canelo Alvarez. Of course, it's David Benavidez as well. We had Benavidez on the podcast a couple weeks ago. Benavidez, the unbeaten two-time world super middleweight champ. He wants a shot at Caleb Plant, but Plant wants Canelo. I don't blame him. One of the biggest draws in boxing, WBA, WBC world super middleweight champion. And speaking of Canelo, the Mexican star has announced his next two fights. February defense against mandatory challenger Avni Yildirim, which will be followed by a unification with 168-pound titleist WBO champion Billy Joe Saunders. Let's start with the Yildirim fight first, though, Mike. What's your take on that matchup?
Well, I understand why Alvarez is taking the fight. He wants to keep his title, which requires him to fight his mandatory challenger, which is what Yildirim is. And he wants to stay busy on top of that. So he wanted to add a fight for the year. So for him, it works. I get all that. The problem is that it's not a competitive fight, which not too many people really talk about, unfortunately. There are other middleweights and super middleweights who would love a shot at Alvarez. It would stand a much, much better chance than Yildirim. I wouldn't pick any of them to beat Alvarez, but they'd stand a better chance than Yildirim. And I don't even mean to disrespect this guy too much. He's an okay fighter. It's just a couple levels below Alvarez. He's just got no chance. I think that speaks to the problems with the system. Mandatories were devised to force top fighters to face the best possible opponents, but too often these days the opposite occurs. It ends up facilitating a bad fight or a bad matchup. We don't know what's going to happen. Alvarez can get knocked out, but on paper it's a horrible matchup, and that's what these mandatories do a lot of the time.
Yeah, I agree with you. Canelo's rightfully a big favorite. It is a mandatory. He's got to do what he's got to do. Much like Plant versus Truax, which was a one-sided fight as it turns out. However, Truax, former world champion, he was a mandatory as well. Now, that didn't stop certain members of the media from blasting the card, which I thought was curious and probably not coming from a straightforward honest place. But hey, perhaps they'll write something equally harsh regarding this Canelo fight. Who knows? I won't hold my breath. What about Canelo versus Billy Joe Saunders, Mike? Is that a good matchup in your opinion?
I don't have a big problem with this matchup, although I doubt it will be, any more competitive than Alvarez's fight with Callum Smith. And we saw, we know what happened there. Alvarez has stated that he wants to unify the 168-pound titles. I get that too. And Saunders has one of those titles, so it makes sense from that perspective. The problem, once again, is that I don't see it as a great matchup. So I understand why he's doing it, but what we end up with is a matchup that's not that great. Now, it's better than Yildirim. It's a lot better than Yildirim. Yeah, you have to say that. Saunders is a good seasoned boxer, but he's just nowhere near as good as Alvarez, and he has no punching power, just none. I don't want to exaggerate, but he doesn't have any punching power compared to a lot of guys. I think Alvarez just walks right through him. Is that really what we want to see in a perfect world? I would say no. I almost wonder if not just, I don't even want to pick on Alvarez here, or just in general, people are so focused on titles, it just messes things up. I would rather Alvarez just don't look at who's got what title. Just step back and say what's the best fight out there. I want that guy. I don't care what the title is. Now, I'm living in dream world right now.
That's what Floyd Mayweather did. I mean,
yeah, I mean that's what guys should do in my perfect world, but they don't. Some of it's about money. I think in this case, Alvarez really wants to be, I believe, the first undisputed super middleweight title holder. So he wants to add to his legacy. I understand that too, but I want good fights.
Yeah, naturally, and I think most boxing fans do. I don't love the Billy Joe Saunders fight. He's done absolutely nothing at 168 pounds. His record at 160 is decent at best. I mean, he did beat Chris Eubank, but that was
better than Yildirim, though. I think
better than Yildirim, but that's that's not saying much. He's got the win over Eubank, which was umpteen years ago. I think like 7 years ago, and against David Lemieux, who I'll just better not saying anything at all with regard to David Lemieux.
Fun guy to watch.
Fun guy to watch. I think that's the best thing I could say about David Lemieux. Yeah. Look, Billy Joe Saunders hasn't proven to be a draw. He's not elite, but he does have a belt, which I suspect he'll surrender quite easily to Canelo, which begs my next question, Mike. What do you make of Canelo's run since he's returned? You had Callum Smith, now you've got Yildirim, and then Billy Joe Saunders.
But you kind of know how I feel about it based on what I just said. It's hard to be overly critical of Alvarez in this respect because I think he's faced more significant challenges than most top fighters over the years. But yeah, it's hard to get too excited about Callum Smith, Avni Yildirim, and Billy Joe Saunders. That's not a fearsome threesome, if you will. I understand, again, that Alvarez wants to unify the titles, which is his way of making more history, which is important to him.
Yeah.
And this is sort of goes back to what I just said a minute ago. I just wonder whether he's putting too much emphasis on titles. I would rather de-emphasize the titles and focus more on the matchups. Forgive my redundancy here. I'd rather see him fight guys like Jamal Charlo or Sergey Derevyanchenko, Demetrius Andre. I know we kind of disagree on that one, but I think he's better than the guys I just mentioned. Or the light heavyweights. And, and Eddie Reynoso told me that it's not fair to have him fight the light heavyweights. Well, it is fair because he already fought one and won a world title. So they blew it. If that's their argument, they blew it. It is fair for him to fight the light heavyweights. But I don't want to be. Listen, Alvarez has taken a lot of risks in his career. Just not as much recently. But hopefully this all leads to Caleb Plant, and we have a fight that's a different level.
Yeah, I agree with you, and you're right. He has proven that he's not afraid of anyone at this point. The fact is that this run is just not that impressive, and I love Canelo. I mean,
so what?
I don't see any names currently that he's fighting that are better than Plant, Benavidez, or Jamal Charlo, who hasn't even campaigned at 160.
I agree.
Yet. However, I do applaud his activity, his dedication to the sport, his skill. I do think he needs to step it up. And Mike, in my humble opinion, one of the reasons why I think he needs to step it up, and you'll probably agree with me, or you'll say, I've been telling you this, is because I'm not convinced that this run is fitting for a pound-for-pound king.
Well, I think when you add up everything he's done the last couple of years, I mean, I don't think he's number one pound for pound. But when you add up everything he's done over the years, I think he's done enough. You just have to decide whether that's good enough, for him to be number one.
Right.
I currently have him number two, which isn't a disgrace for him. Listen, there's 3 or 4 guys that you can argue are top. That should be number one pound for pound. They're all just really great fighters, and he's obviously one of those guys. So he's done enough. He's taken challenges. He's not dodging people, that kind of thing. So he deserves the respect he gets.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, even though the February 27th match is likely a mismatch. And while we're on the subject of mismatches, we've got the Super Bowl coming up. Kansas City Chiefs versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A lot of people picking the Chiefs and believe it's a mismatch, that they're going to win going away. Are you one of them?
No, I don't think it's a mismatch. I think I'm going to go with the Chiefs. I just think the Chiefs' offense is just off the charts, as is Patrick Mahomes. I mean, that offense is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I think Tampa Bay is on a roll right now. Yeah. And when you have Tom Brady as your quarterback and you're on a roll, I think you got to
possible.
Yeah, you got to take Tampa Bay seriously. I just think the Bucs are a little bit outgunned in this one. And I'll add this, and this is just sort of my maybe bias a little bit against. I think it's almost more against New England than it is against Brady. But I don't need to see Brady win another Super Bowl. He's won.
Seriously, what is the point at this? At this stage, I'm kind of torn because I'm a Giants fan, and I dislike Tom Brady. I dislike anything related to the Patriots. We did beat them twice in the Super Bowl, but Jason Pierre-Paul, former Giant, he's on Tampa Bay right now, and I'll always root for him. So that makes it tough. I liked KC to win. I just hope JPP does well. I remember back in the day someone saying that the next great American heavyweight is probably a linebacker or a tight end or something like that. Is that something you agree with?
Well, I've heard that forever. I've said it too. They say the best heavyweight boxers in the world are playing linebacker in the NFL. Think about it. I think kids back in the day looked up to guys like Joe Louis and Rocky Marciano and Muhammad Ali. Those were their role models.
Right.
When boxing was like in a little bit different place in our society, they wanted to be like those guys. I'm not sure that type of boxer has existed for a while, where kids are like clamoring to be like him. Some kids, yeah, but not on a really, really large scale. Now kids want to play football or baseball, basketball, or maybe baseball. The best athletes make a ton of money, in those sports, and they don't get hit in the head the same way that they do in boxing. So it takes a special kid, to get into boxing. As we know, it usually comes from lower income, areas and things like that. But those guys they're interested in the team sports. The role models aren't out there.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think about football players who decide to become boxers? There's a recent bit of news actually I saw that we'll get into in a second, but overall the history of that, what's your take on football players who want to get hit with the gloves instead of the helmet?
Well, not so coincidentally, I just posted a piece on boxingjunkie.usatoday.com on football players turned boxers, sort of in honor of the Super Bowl. So I go over 8 of them. It almost always never works. Which shows you how difficult it is to be successful in boxing. A few guys have reached a fairly high level. A guy named Charlie Powell was an NFL player. Gerald Washington, as we know, Dominic Brazil, as we know. Now, Washington and Brazil didn't play in the NFL. They played college football. Yeah. But all 3 of those guys fought for titles. But most of these guys find out by fighting journeymen that it's a lot harder than they ever thought it would be. I'm talking about guys like Mark Gastineau and Ed Too Tall Jones, Alonzo Highsmith, guys like that, who they do it for a little while. They look bad. They don't have a lot of success, and they just get out when they realize, you know what, this isn't my thing. So, and it's sort of a testament to how difficult it is to be a boxer. You got to be a special kind of guy, and you got to start. Normally, you have to start earlier. Guys like Wilder who start late. I knew Wilder start when he was like 19 or 20.
He did, yeah.
Yeah. That's an anomaly. And then when some of these guys are trying to do it at 30, 35, 37, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, speaking of which, I don't know if you saw this. What do you make of Brandon Marshall, former NFL wide receiver, saying he wants to fight Deontay Wilder?
You know what? I want to thank Brandon Marshall because I needed a good laugh. he says he's going to F up Wilder. This is just a guy flapping his gums. He literally would not last around with Wilder. If he wants to box, he should fight Logan or Jake Paul or somebody like that. He would get hurt. I would hope they wouldn't even sanction a fight between.
That's scary. I think
Brandon Marshall and Wilder.
Yeah, I think hurt is a nice way to put it. I mean, he would get hurt against any top boxer. Against Deontay Wilder, I shudder to think what might happen to him. So I just hope it's mere talk and he's not working his way toward that. I doubt Deontay ever takes that fight anyway.
He's just a guy talking, hyping himself.
Right, yeah.
Getting attention.
Yeah, I just can't see it, but that's another topic for another day. It's time to bring in our first guest. He is boxing's current longest reigning world champion, possessing some of the fastest hands and highest ring IQ in the game today, the WBC World Featherweight Champion, Mr. Gary Russell Jr. Gary, first, thank you very much for taking out the time out of your busy schedule to join us today.
Man, I appreciate it, man. We do got a lot going on.
I know you do. I know it's been quite a rough past couple months for you with the death of your brother. Our thoughts and prayers are with your family. I can imagine it's been a pretty tough situation.
Yeah, it's been pretty tough, man. But the thing that keeps me going and keeps me pushing is that I know I got people depending on me. I got my niece, my two nieces and my nephew that my younger brother left behind. Me and my wife, we have 5 of our own, and I'm just grateful that I had the support system from my wife to be able to help, and be willing to step in, and help take care of my brother's children, as if they was ours, so.
That's incredible that you stepped in to do something like that. What is it like to have all of those children in the house? What's the dynamic in the Russell household right now?
It's crazy. I mean, we kind of still split the children a little bit, because of course they want to be with their grandparents sometimes, with my mother and my father and their uncles.
Yeah.
But so we pretty much take our turns. But man, when we have them, man, it's just it's 8 children in the house.
You can imagine. Wow.
And they're all under the age of 10 or all under the age of 9 years old. So it's just
it's a lot of energy in there.
It's busy. It's real busy. I'll tell you that much.
So we know that you're a gym rat. Has any of this or the pandemic also, has that stopped you in any way from following your usual gym routine?
Actually, it hasn't. It hasn't because we have our own facility. We're not bonded by the restrictions of everyone else. We can kind of go in the gym whenever we please. I'm one of those type of guys that I balance whatever I'm going through with some sort of substance. So if I'm frustrated or irritated or can't go to sleep, and I'm going to just go to the gym. I don't care if it's 1, 2, 3 in the morning.
Wow.
I'm going to go work out. Give me a peace of mind. Come home, take a shower, then I can go to sleep and rest.
There you go. So we recently saw you in the corner of your brother, Gary Antonio Russell. Last December, he defeated Juan Carlos Payano. Do you see yourself being a trainer after boxing, or is this something you're keeping in the family?
I could definitely see myself being a trainer after boxing. Boxing isn't who I am. It's what I do, but it definitely helped mold me. As far as the individual, as far as who I am as a person. It taught me substance. It taught me a foundation, stability, discipline, sacrifice. A lot of stuff, man, that should definitely get passed on, to the younger generation and the children that's really willing to learn and willing to take the time out of their day instead of doing something unproductive and doing something productive, then why not give back?
Does working a corner like that sort of give you a different perspective on things? Does it add to your game as a fighter yourself?
Does it add to my game as a fighter? Maybe a little. I think it gives me the ability to relate to what's going on in the corner. You know what I mean? You know, as a fighter, you know, because I'm a fighter, I know what I will want when I come back to my corner. You know, I know certain things that's needed when you come back to the corner. A lot of these guys, they're just good hype men. You know, when you come back to your corner, you need to it's like a pit crew. You need to be cooled down as quick as possible. You need to get your water, get your instructions, and they got to be good instructions, not just throw more punches. You know, not just telling you to throw more punches or you gotta pick it up. You know, it got to be specific instructions. Well, this is happening because of this. This is how you take it away. This is how you execute it. You know, stuff like that. You know, so I think it helps me. Because I'm a fighter, it gives me the balance to be able to work the corner properly.
What did you think of your brother's performance versus Payano?
I personally didn't like it.
What didn't you like about it?
What didn't I like about it? I felt like my brother. I felt like mentally he was going through a lot of stuff. Just the fact that he was willing to take the fight within a time frame in which that we got the information dealing with my younger brother, you know, which was his younger brother as well. I knew that mentally he wasn't in a proper type of mindset, you know, but for him to still want to fight, you know, speaks volumes on him as an individual.
Yeah.
But I think you need more than that, you know, in the sport of boxing. You can't just go and fight off of emotions. And I felt like my brother was fighting more off of his emotions, you know, stuff like that, because he was just mentally frustrated because of his younger brother. It was a lot of missed opportunities that I know if he was a little more relaxed and if he was in a better state of mind, he would have been able to capitalize on. I wish, and his defensive discipline, I wish it could have been a little better. I felt like he got touched a little too much for my liking.
So, in your opinion, how far away is he from challenging for a world title?
Oh no, I think he's ready to challenge for a world title as of now.
Okay.
I think he's ready to challenge for a world title as of now. Payano is an ex-world champion, correct?
Right, that's right.
You know, very, very tough, rugged guy. Anyone that steps in the ring with him, he's pretty much like a gatekeeper to a certain extent, you know. And we got this saying, an ugly win is better than the pretty loss any day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's another brother, Gary Antoine, who defeated Jaron Ennis in the amateurs. He had a great amateur career. He's now 13-0 with 13 knockouts as a pro. What's the plan for him?
Oh man, we trying to make some things move with him too, man. He has a tremendous talent. He's very fan friendly. He has a very fan friendly skill set, and we want to do something big with him. You know, we want to start stepping his competition up. We want to put him in there with these guys that's supposed to be, you know, something, so we can prove just how good he really is. You know, I think the Russell pedigree is going to speak names in the sport of boxing as long as one of us is competing in it.
Have you ever considered pitching to Showtime a triple header featuring all three of the Russell brothers?
Nah, I haven't, but that's a great idea.
Yeah, we definitely watch, so maybe that's one to consider. Now,
That's a great idea.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned yourself that it's been difficult to lure other top fighters in the ring, which maybe is why you haven't been as active as some guys. Do you feel that's going to change this year?
I hope so. I feel like I feel like these guys are starting to run out of options at this point. You know, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like they're somewhat running out of options. You know, everyone who's supposed to be someone, they're going to have to fight each other. You know, who else is there for them to fight? Are the fans going to continue? Are the fans going to continue to sit and just accept, you know, the people who's supposed to be considered the top guys in the sport of boxing to just fight random guys just to beat up on? Or are they going to truly start demanding for the best to fight the best?
Now, you haven't fought since February of last year. There's been the pandemic, obviously. Do you know when you might return to the ring?
Not as of yet. Not as of yet, but I'm definitely ready to return to the ring. Whether I'm defending my title at 126 or whether one of these guys in a different weight division want to meet at the catch weight.
So you haven't heard any names yet as far as possible opponents yet, right?
I heard something about Ray Vargas. Ray Vargas is being a mandatory, who's a name that, you know, doesn't really do too much for me. It don't really arouse me, man. It's not a name that I'm looking forward to. If it's a fight that we have to take, then cool. Just put his ass on the chopping block. But if it was up to me, you know, it'd be one of these other guys. It'd be a Gervonta Tank Davis. It'd be, you know, Vasily Lomachenko if he want to, you know what I'm saying, redeem himself from what happened to him with Tilifimo. You know, it'd be a Devin Haney. It'd be one of these guys.
We heard something about Josh Warrington perhaps negotiating with you. Has there been any contact?
Eddie Hearns reached out to me through Instagram. He offered me $1 million to fight Josh Warrington for a unification match. And I felt like it was beneath my standards.
Yeah. No.
You know?
Is there anyone at 26 you're targeting?
To be honest, at 26, it's nobody at my weight division right now that I would say that I'm actually targeting that I want. All the guys that I want is at maybe 30 or 35. But I think right now I'm at the dilemma where as though I'm just coming up on this time frame because I am a title holder. You know, I have the dilemma whereas though I still have to defend my title within a certain time frame. So I'll compete against the next best guy, then the champion. Whoever the next best guy is, we'll compete against him, you know, and God willing, immediately we get through that. Immediately after, you know, we want to start working on some things so we can get us another fight. In this year, you know, because once my mandatory is completely satisfied, then I have the ability to go and take another fight. Yeah. The question is, who's going to fight me? Who's be willing to take the fight?
You mentioned Tank Davis, Gervonta Davis. Him and Leo Santa Cruz fought last October. What did you think of that fight?
I felt like a completely unbiased opinion. I felt like Leo held his own very, very well. I felt like Leo, the fight, he got stopped in the 6th round, I think.
Yeah.
I honestly believe that leading up to that fight, leading up to the 6th round, Leo was clearly winning in my book.
Oh. Now, you mentioned Tank Davis. What are the chances that we see Tank Davis versus Gary Russell in 2021?
Man, listen. Y'all asked the wrong person that question. I need to be asking Floyd Mayweather that, you know, because I don't think they feel as though it's in Tank's best interest to step in the ring with me. You know, these guys, they tend to cater to their fighters. They cater to the guys in the sport. They cater to these guys. They consider them the next big thing. I think I'm too much of a threat. I'm too much of a risk. I can really fucking fight, and I'm willing to make the fight happen. I ain't one of these guys that's gonna run away from the fight. We're gonna make the fight happen. And I honestly feel as though that they believe that I have the skill set and everything to make it very, very difficult and expose their fighter. And if I do that, that kind of messes up their investment.
But putting on our promoter hats for a second, you've got, you're talking about the DMV area. You're talking about a rivalry that I think would bring out a lot of people. Wouldn't it be a big fight from a promoter standpoint?
Hell yeah, it'll be a big fight. Hell yeah, it'll be a big fight. From an unbiased promoter standpoint, it'll be a big fight. Even from a biased promoter standpoint, it'll be a big fight. If me and Gervonta Tank Davis fight, I don't give a damn who else is fighting. You can put Earl Spence and Terrence Crawford on the same day on different networks, and I guarantee you, me and Gervonta would generate more numbers, more viewership.
It's a great fight. Now, you've made it clear you're willing to move all the way up to 147 if you have to. Are you targeting someone there, like a big name? Or if you did have to do that, would you settle in at 147 and campaign at that weight class?
Nah, I wouldn't campaign at the weight class. I just honestly want to do it just to be able to say I did it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't campaign at it, but I want to be able to prove to everyone, as well as to myself, that I'm fully capable of getting the job done. You know what I'm saying? Against whoever the opponent is.
Gary, you're still young. You're only 32 years old. At the same time, you're not a kid anymore. Do you feel a sense of urgency to get some big things done in the ring?
I always had a sense of urgency to get big things done in the ring. I want to get it done now because I'm 100% ready now. I was ready then before, but I had to go, and it's a concept of order. I wanted to follow the lead of however my father wanted to navigate and move my career at the point of time. We did that, and I became the longest world champion in the sport of boxing as today. But as of now, I want to do things for myself. There's certain people that I want to fight just for me, just because they in and around my weight class and people feel as though that they're good. I want to fight them. I want to fight whoever's supposed to be the best. I know I'm one of the best.
That leads me to my next question. So if you could pick 3 guys, your next 3 opponents, you get to decide, no questions asked. Who would the 3 guys be?
I would want Gervonta.
Okay.
I would want Lomachenko.
Okay.
And I would want Bud Crawford.
Wow.
I would pay to see those fights.
I pay double.
Yeah. Them the fights that I would want.
Yeah, I think that people would buy into those fights. So on a bigger scale, in general, what do you want to accomplish in your career before all is said and done?
What do I want to accomplish in my career before it's all said and done?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, to be honest with you, I've never really had when I first competed in the sport of boxing, I never really had a dream or goal to become a world champion. I grew up in that era where as though I wanted to be an Olympian. I accomplished that, and I didn't get a chance to compete in the Olympics after I beat the previous medalists of the last Olympic Games, and I was going to the Olympic Games as a medal favorite. And I had so much love and support from people that I didn't know. And it was at that point that I felt like I had to make it up to my fans. I didn't want them to think that the love that they gave me was in vain. It was at that point that I wanted to become a world champion. I've accomplished that. You know, I'm the longest reigning champion in the sport of boxing. I feel like at this point in my life, I want to just ultimately, you know, I do this for my family. You know, I feel like that's what everyone has their occupation for. You know, they want to do it for themselves. Ultimately, they want a sense of financial stability, and they also want to be able to just do it for their family. That's honestly what I do it for. I do it for my family. I do it for the people that genuinely love the hard work, the effort, and the energy that I put into it. You know, and honestly, like the work that I do in my craft as a fighter. You know, that's what I want to accomplish. I want the people to recognize me as one of the best that's done it. One of the best people that's been doing the game.
Good stuff, as usual, Gary. Listen, we know how busy you are, so we really appreciate you taking the time to join us. We hope you join us again soon.
Oh, man, I greatly appreciate it, fellas.
All right, it's time for the week in review. Last Saturday, PBC on Fox returned with undefeated IBF World Super Middleweight Champion Caleb Sweethands Plant defending his strap against former champion Caleb Truax. We discussed the ratings. Now let's dissect the fight. Plant pitched a shutout on all three cards, winning a wide 12-round unanimous decision. Beat up Truax, but didn't come close to stopping him as he said he would. Mike, what was your take on Plant's performance?
I thought he looked really good. He didn't get the knockout, as you said, but he won every round on all three cards. And Truax landed fewer than 4 punches per round, according to CompuBox. It really doesn't get more dominating than that unless you score a knockout. Truax acknowledged that Plant was just too elusive for him. In other words, he was just too quick and just too good overall. And Plant said that he injured his hand in the first third of the fight, and I'll take his word for that. That would make his performance all the more impressive to me, and it might play a role in the fact that he couldn't knock him out, even though that wasn't his power hand. I expected, or at least hoped for more from Truax, to be honest with you, but I can't say I'm surprised at the outcome. I thought Plant would dominate.
Yeah, I thought Plant would as well, and I thought he might even be able to stop Truax, who's a fairly durable guy. So I'm not surprised that didn't happen, but I thought Plant put on a show. Injured hand or not, he did what he needed to do. Took very few punches, landed plenty of return, showed a great jab, good defense, good footwork, just overall really good fundamentals. And so I thought he had a good performance. Of course, now everyone is talking about a showdown between Plant and Canelo Alvarez unification. How do you see that fight playing out?
I think Alvarez has problems with Plant, who's at least as quick as Canelo, and I think he might be more athletic. Plant isn't Callum Smith. He isn't a plodding guy who will be easy to corner, easy to hit, which I believe Smith was in that fight. He would be elusive against Alvarez, too. The problem for Plant is that Alvarez is good at figuring out such things, finding out ways to get to his opponents and hurting them. He's just a master at that, right? That's why he's accomplished so much over his career. I think Plant would have to be at his very best and not make mistakes in order to score an upset, which I do believe is possible. And one thing is I wonder about Plant's power. I think being able to hurt Alvarez, like, I don't know if we'll agree on this, but like Triple G could. Triple G's obviously has a ton of power, and I think that played a role in how difficult it was for Alvarez in those fights. That prevents him from Alvarez from walking down opponents. I'm not sure Plant can hurt Alvarez. But the bottom line for me, though, is it's a terrific matchup. It would be Alvarez's toughest fight since maybe Daniel Jacobs in 2019.
Yeah, I believe so as well. And regarding whether or not he could hurt Alvarez, I don't know. I don't necessarily think he has to.
Not necessarily.
Mayweather didn't. Aristotle Lauer gave a pretty good fight, and I don't think he really hurt Canelo at any point or another. Obviously, Canelo's much improved
exactly
in those fights.
Exactly, that's what I was going to say.
But nevertheless, I still think that there's a path to victory in that sort of game plan, which Plant could implement. He's got a great jab. He's got good footwork. He's got good defense, and he's going to make Canelo work. Can he do it for 12 rounds? That's what we want to see, with Canelo coming forward, trying to land those body shots to slow him down. It's a really good fight. Another good fight, obviously, is the one between Plant and his longtime rival, David Benavidez. What do you think of that one?
Yeah, I've said it before. I think it's essentially a 50-50 fight. It's a wonderful fight. You know, two young, hot, unbeaten guys at the peak of their careers. It's almost like a perfect matchup. I still think that Plant is the better boxer, maybe more so now than ever, that he's the better boxer, probably a better athlete, which is important. Benavidez, I think, is an underappreciated boxer. I think he's a good boxer, but he relies more on his physical advantages. He just beats guys down, walks them down and beats them down, which I just love. If I had to make an early prediction, I still lean a little toward Benavidez because of his power. But I think he'd also have all kinds of problems with Plant's quickness and athleticism. That's why it goes back to what I said initially. I think it's essentially a 50-50 fight.
Yeah, these are great fights. Great fights. Both of those fights. I really want to see one of those this year. I think Caleb Plant has worked himself up to being in one of those big fights, whether it's Canelo Alvarez or David Benavidez. And heck, the fans deserve one of them. And forget the fight with respect to Benavidez, although that's going to be fantastic. I even want to see just the buildup. I mean, that might affect how the fight plays out when I think about it, because of the way these guys can get under each other's skins or whatever. It's a good matchup. I can't wait until it goes down. Now, in the co-feature, another interesting battle, this one between unbeaten heavyweight prospects, Michael Coffey versus Darmani Rock. We had Rock on the PBC podcast last week, and Coffey stunned a lot of onlookers with an impressive third-round KO over Rock. Mike, were you surprised by what Coffey was able to do?
A little bit. The guy's like the football players we discussed earlier. He turned pro at 30. I don't think he's ever going to really catch up to the top heavyweights. That said, he looked like a pro in there. He waited for his opportunities, and he just exploded when they presented themselves. It looks like he's got some serious heavyweight power. He's a big guy, 6'5", 270, and in shape in that fight. That's a big guy. And as a former military guy, it looks like he also has the discipline. He could make some noise. He's 34, though. He better get moving pretty quickly.
Yeah, it looks like he's trying to move fairly quickly. And you're right. I was impressed by what he did. I mean, he basically dismissed Darmani Rock like, hey, look, this is not my level. You know, I'm past this. Let's move on to whatever the next level is, because this guy doesn't deserve to be in the ring with me, or belong in the ring with me, I should say. Now, speaking of Rock, he was a touted amateur, touted prospect. Now he suffers this devastating loss. Where does he go from here?
I don't know. He's 24. That's a good thing. So he can get back on the horse if that's what he wants, being such a young guy. He lost quite a bit of weight for that, based on what he told us. He was over 300 pounds, and I think he weighed like 30-some pounds less than that. Maybe he takes some more time to work on his conditioning, because obviously he still wasn't in real good shape, while also trying to figure out what went wrong against Coffey. Rock has good size. He has the amateur background. That's a solid foundation on which to build. Yeah. He's going to have to be mentally tough, though. That was a bad knockout. So we're gonna see how tough he is mentally. He's going to have to really want it, in other words. So we'll see what happens.
Exactly. I think it starts with taking a long look in the mirror, evaluating how dedicated he is to the sport, and then make the decision whether or not he really, truly wants to dedicate himself to doing what needs to be done in order to reach the pinnacle, or work his way to wherever he needs to be. Let's talk about the winner, Michael Coffey. Who would you like to see him face next?
Well, I hadn't thought about a specific guy, but I think a fringe contender at this point, which is saying something based on his limited experience. I mean, that's a step. But after what I saw in that fight, it looks like he's got something going on. Try a fringe contender. If he wins that, then you really got something.
Yeah, after the fight, he mentioned Gerald Washington, Charles Martin, Dominic Brazil. Some tough matchups.
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah,
but
sorry.
These are guys he believes are going to prepare him for that next step. I'm with you. I think maybe he takes maybe one step before those guys, and then a Gerald Washington to sort of see where he's at. But either way, no matter who he faces, I'm looking forward to seeing Michael Coffey in the ring again. Now, also on the card, undefeated super welterweight prospect Joey Spencer returned in a slight step up himself versus Isaiah Seldon. Well, supposed to be a step up, but Spencer wasted no time in the ring, stopped Seldon in one round. Mike, what were your thoughts on Spencer's performance?
He looked good. Remember, he's only 20 years old. He says he's starting to mature. physically, meaning he's getting his man strength. Maybe that's what we saw on Saturday. That right hand that put Selden down the first time was so hard it sort of spun him to the canvas. That was a real shot. And then he finished it with that shot to the temple. Strong performance, but it lasted only 2 minutes and 15 seconds. I want to see him get in more work. I think he's a terrific prospect, one of the best prospects in the sport. So I look forward to following him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the biggest thing I saw from him in this fight was patience. Even though it was a first-round KO, he fought at a pace that I see veterans fight at. So I was impressed. Where is Spencer in terms of his development?
I think he's progressing nicely. He has that good amateur background. That's the foundation. He was a top junior fighter, and he gets better every time he fights as a pro. Again, though, only 20 years old, only 12 fights. There's no rush. He's just going to continue to get better and better. I think he could probably handle a fringe contender right now. But I would wait a little while. Again, 12 fights isn't very many professional fights. Right. I would wait to take the next step. But I think he could be a world champion in, say, late 2022. That would be like my timetable for him. That still gives him plenty of time to develop a little bit more.
Yeah, he said he wants to fight 4 or 5 times this year. I think that's the right idea. And hopefully by the end of the year, he's worked himself into contender status, or he starts off next year facing a contender. But at that age, there's no rush, none at all. So we'll wait and see how he progresses.
He looks like a beast, doesn't he, physically?
He does. I mean, like,
he really does.
I can tell he's a gym rat completely.
Yeah.
And dedicated to the sport, and you're seeing the improvement. So, well, looking forward to see what 2021 has in store for Joey Spencer. All right, it's time for Mike and I to go toe-to-toe. This week, we're going to unveil our crystal ball for 2021 and announce who we project will win the major PBC awards for this year. We'll see how accurate we are. We may want to check back on this at the end of the year and see how close we were. But we're going to start off with the traditional fighter of the year. This is for 2021. Mike Stradamus, what or who is your pick?
Okay, this was a difficult exercise, but kind of fun at the same time. I'm going to go with Errol Spence Jr. I figure that he's going to fight 2 high-caliber opponents at least, probably 2. Maybe Yordenis Ugas next, and then who knows, maybe Manny Pacquiao, Terrence Crawford, Keith Thurman, another top guy. And I just don't see Spence losing. I think he has another really, really strong year. Now, of course, all this depends on who the top guys fight and how they perform. That couldn't be more obvious. So I think guys like Gervonta Davis, the Charlos, even Manny Pacquiao could be in the discussion in the end. But when I first started thinking about who would be my fighter of the year, this just Spence jumped right out, and I'm going to stick to that.
I don't blame you. I thought about Errol Spence, and it makes a lot of sense, but I'm going to go with Deontay Wilder. I have a vision where Deontay returns against a tough opponent, maybe a Robert Helenius or Charles Martin, flashes that big power that we're used to, comes out with the knockout win, sets himself up for a big fight next versus a Tyson Fury or an Andy Ruiz Jr., where, again, his right hand carries him to victory. Now, look, if he's able to do that, coming off the kind of 2020 that he had, I think he takes the award here, Mike.
I thought about him for a category that we didn't include. I thought maybe we would include comeback of the year. What you just described for sure would be like comeback of the year after what happened to him against Fury. But yeah, he wins 2 big fights in spectacular fashion. He would be in the conversation too. Well, we'll have to revisit all of this at the end of the year and see where we landed.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's talk about fight of the year. Who do you got, or what do you have?
Okay, this is really hard because we don't know for sure what matchups are going to be made. But this actually will go back to what we were discussing earlier. My fight of the year, my prediction for fight of the year is Canelo Alvarez versus Caleb Plant. I think, and we've just sort of alluded to this, I think we've become so accustomed to Alvarez overwhelming his opponents that we're going to be surprised when we see him get pushed by someone. I think that someone could be Plant for the reasons that we discussed earlier. And I think, and we didn't talk about this, I think we could see things from Plant that we haven't seen before.
True.
Maybe things that Alvarez didn't anticipate. You know, guys get better, and then when they step in with a guy at the next level, then what they do in the ring is the next level. And that could happen with a guy like Plant, who's so good and so dedicated to the sport. We might see things from him and just go, holy crap, didn't see that coming, that kind of thing. I think Alvarez might have to dig deeper in this fight than he has in the past few years, which could produce a special fight. I really think that would be a special fight.
Yeah, I could see it. Now that you're telling me, I totally see it. I think and if Plant fights David Benavidez as well, that could be a Fight of the Year candidate. You mentioned Errol Spence Jr. versus your Dennis Ugas unification. That could be a Fight of the Year candidate. Tank versus Isaac Cruz or Gary Russell.
Tank versus anybody. Yeah.
Tank, that could be a Fight of the Year candidate. But I'm going with Luis Nery versus Brandon Figueroa.
Good one.
I don't know if it happens. It's been rumored. I think it's an insane matchup in terms of styles, guaranteed action, lots of power punches, bombs away until someone falls. And Mike, I seriously doubt that fight goes the distance.
No, you're 100% spot on with that fight. That's a can't miss action fight. I mean, unless Nery decides I'm going to box this guy because
which he did his last fight.
He could do that. He could. Right. He could say this guy's so good inside and so tough. I'm a better boxer. I'm just going to box him and stay on the outside. I suppose that can happen, but I think there's going to be fireworks. I guess the only reason I would still lean toward Alvarez and Plant, because I think as good as Nery and Figueroa are, I think Canelo and Plant are like a little bit higher level. So to me, that adds sort of intensity to the equation. But listen, that's going to be a really fun fight, Nery against Figueroa.
Yeah, totally. I hope it happens. I'm looking forward to it. It looks like they're looking forward to it. And I think that the fans will be rewarded for their patience. All right, time for our next category, 2021 Breakout Candidate. Now, this is an award for someone who emerges as a star, a pound-for-pound entrant. In short, someone who breaks out of the pack. Mike, who do you got?
Okay, I don't know if this guy's pound for pound, but I think his next fight could be a fight where he becomes a world champion and he really takes a big, big leap in his career. And we just saw him fight Rais Alim. I just really liked what I saw from him in his knockout victory over Victor Pasillas on January 23rd. He just seems to have it all to me: the speed, the skills, the poise, the dedication. Yes. We had a chance to talk to him on the podcast, and I just really liked what I heard from him. Obviously, he's a guy whose head is in a really, really good place, which I think that always is a positive thing. I think he's going to be a world champion within a few fights, and then who knows after that.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mention him because what stands out to me, all of those attributes, but particularly the dedication, I really like where his head is at. And that's a pretty bold pick because it's a stacked division, but I like it. I like it a lot. And tell you what, I'm going to stay in that division with my pick because I'm going with Stephen Fulton Jr. I think we saw a little bit of it already earlier this year versus Angelo Leo. I think at this point, if he gets a crack at another one of the champions, I think he wins, and then maybe he's a lock for this award. I mean, right now it's early. He's looking like the best fighter at 122. Can you imagine a fight between him and Alim?
Yeah, that would be fun. I think we talked about that earlier. That would be fantastic. I think we sort of, you and I sort of took a different approach to this thing because to me, Fulton already kind of had his breakout with that victory over Angelo Leo. But yeah, if you're talking about a guy who's going to start approaching pound for pound, Fulton is a step ahead of Rais Alim, obviously. I love both those guys.
Yeah, me too. Now, with that, last but not least, prospect of the year. Who's your choice, Mike?
This is always a tough one because there's so many good young fighters, and we've gotten to know some of these guys, and they're all really cool, and you want the best for all these guys. But in the end, I landed on Jesus Ramos. This is a tough one because you never know how guys will develop. Ramos looks pretty damn good at 19 years old, though. He can box. He has patience, a lot of poise for such a young fighter. And the obvious thing about him is that he could just crack. I mean, he has really, really heavy hands. He's also left-handed, which doesn't hurt. That's always at least a slight advantage, I think. And on top of everything else, he's really fun to watch, which to me it's important. So he's a marketable guy on top of everything else. He's definitely a prospect to keep an eye on.
I absolutely agree with you, and that's why he's my choice as well.
We didn't know. We didn't talk beforehand.
Right. I'm pleasantly surprised. Now, Ramos is slated to return February 27th, so we'll see him pretty soon, but he's southpaw. He's shown good boxing skills, devastated power. Still 19 years old. He turns 20 years old next month. It's scary. I mean, I think he finishes out the year by elevating himself from prospect to contender, making him the clear winner of this award. Of course, we'll see how this all pans out. And, who knows? We saw some breakout performances this year, last year, I should say, we saw a lot of things last year, and we'll see how it all translates. I'm thinking of like Chris Colbert, Montestani Jonas, Jaron Ennis, but I feel they've sort of graduated. I think they've maybe broken out a little bit. I was just thinking about that category in particular, and then the prospects. But so many interesting things could happen in 2021, and we look forward to seeing it all. All right, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Many thanks to Gary Russell Jr. for joining us, and thank you guys as always for listening. So for myself and Mike, be sure to check us out next week for more boxing talk right here on the PBC Podcast.